Everyone is fascinated with men fucking men. 1. The way our bodies come together. The rhythmic slap of thigh on buttock is a sound effect that must by now have moved to the top drawer of the BBC sound effects department. I wonder how they make the sound of two men fucking. And it is fucking, not making love, is it? By punching an arm until it goes numb, by slapping two raw steaks into each other with force. Or is it with cabbages? I remember once someone telling me that the sound effect for decapitation is the captured moment of a cleaver through a cabbage. Is that how it's done? Holding taut green meat in each hand and clapping till you get that just right sound of two men fucking. 2. Stepping outside afterwards, we all have an argument about it. Friends reflect the question onto us or ask around it till they think they have the answer or wear it in their eyes. We know, they say. We've worked you out, and we laugh. Join in because my friend Anushka, she's a top for sure, and we both know that Kate's boyfriend couldn't be a hungrier power bottom. And I felt powerful and guilty for a while. 3. In Brokeback Mountain and God's Own Country, they spit once and fuck. And the only way that would have worked is if Jake Gyllenhaal and that vet had the shits. I wonder how many of these directors have had period sex or put a towel down, but that's not what we want to watch, is it? Sitting in an art cinema, eating wasabi popcorn. Hello and welcome. My name is Tom Denbigh and I'm your host tonight. I'd like to start with an apology. Some of you will never be able to eat wasabi popcorn or look Jake Gyllenhaal in the eye ever again, and that is my fault. Welcome to Poetry with Pride. All of our prides got cancelled this year and we thought that was really shit. So here we are to give you some of that queer goodness. We have an incredible lineup tonight. Some of the country's best spoken word artists, and often because a lot of the best moments in poetry are those unrehearsed ones, the chat at the bar or the discussion around a table afterwards. In between the sets tonight, we'll be talking about all things queer and setting the world to rights. The first poet we have for you tonight is Keith Jarrett. Sometimes people say someone just gets it, you know? And I think Keith is absolutely one of those people. He gets it. With his poetry, he'll pull out the shape of an idea into the room, and then he'll mould it into something that suddenly strikes you as true, whether it's your truth or a new truth. And he does it with the most charming wit and humour. I'd like to welcome to the virtual stage the amazing Keith Jarrett, who comes to you tonight from his trampoline. Keith.
Happy Pride, everyone. This is my Pride jump. And where I am, it is always Pride, and it doesn't matter what time of the year it is. There is always a lot to celebrate about queerness. And I would like to start with a poem, which is from my collection, and it is called Acknowledgements, and it's kind of like my Pride anthem. We who have survived. We who have queered, fagged and puffed our way through the school systems. We, the survivors of oppressive institutions and the sticklers and stone hearts that run them. We who have survived. We with glitter-proof ribs that once caved under the shadow of our parents' disapproval. We with pockets made of hand-me-down wounds. We of pursed lips and handbag humour and zones 4, 5 and 6 commutes. We who once knew these streets by their bus shelters, who still know these streets by their old names, Racism Road, Homophobia Grove, Bigot Hill. We who know history's desire to repeat, who know progress is neither linear nor neat. We who never take for granted. We who have survived the gentrifier's claw, we have seen our media, our companies, our governments parade around rainbow flags and diversity awards at their fashionable convenience. We who have journeyed past this cluster of colonizing avenues, who have learned to sip heavily accented wine, who have washed our tongues in its morning after. We have loved beyond borders as we do not fear the other, though fear, it's not foreign to us. We who were born on an island and whose parents were born on another island, we have learned to build bridges, and we have learned to cross those bridges even as they burn with the fuel the politicians provided. We who never take for granted. We stand in love and in fury and in power. Mood change, outfit change, and this one is called Mercury, and I don't really read it out often, but it has a kind of tender moment which I think a lot of us are in need of. Mercury. You are lying next to me. We are reciting MC Sola, le vent souffle en Arizona, on est de me dans Arizona. It is Wednesday, mercredi. 88 days since I shrugged myself single, and I am here in a shrunken room, and you do not ask me what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of Icarus, because lately I've been burning to fly, and sometimes my desire for freedom scorches a hole in my bed. So I am imagining that flying is burning, and I spark another half-crushed cigarette I've fished out from a mug on the floor and hold it to your mouth. I'm overly late again, going somewhere, and I could use a pair of winged feet or a smaller orbit, but on this particular Wednesday, all that matters are my sweaty armpits, your legs intertwined with mine, and the infinite passing of time. So I had this dream which was really about heteronormativity and patriarchy and all of that bullshit. And it ended up being a poem. Again, I don't think I've read this out more than once. The game show host. The game show host, teeth whitened to buggery, pulls back the screen. The carousel spins. This is what you could have had. 4 box sets of toilet brushes, a pristine oven and matching marigold gloves, a dozen carving knives, a pair of waving wives. One follows the other. A mother who accidentally calls the second by the first's name, but calls her all the same. Outside the camera frame, the sly host gooses the assistant who is bent to spin the wheel for the remaining contestants. And now I realise this is the 90s. How fucked up. We all need a place in the past to return, a fire meeting point. This is what you could have, from the corner of my eye, a succession of X's lined up like spares in diminishing height, their unread texts with all possible interpretations underlined. I'm out of play, but I buzz in anyway. I know this one so well, I shout, but it's not my turn. And the usher gruffly grabs me by the arm. We walk away, and the studio starts to burn. Thank you so much for watching, and I will leave you with one more poem. I grew up on lots of really gory biblical stories from the Old Testament, and I really had to write a poem about one of them in particular. And I also have been follically challenged for a while, which is great. During lockdown, there's been loads of people with bad hair, and I've just been shaving my hair, the same as I have done for the last decade. That's enough preamble. Thanks again, and take care of yourselves. Receding since 24. I think of all the thin-skinned prophets with even thinner hair, how in other circumstances I might have been president. The midwife who delivered me, according to my mother, said I cried like a leader. Or maybe I would have inherited a double portion of the spirit. It's a myth that male pattern baldness runs in the mother's genes. Her father died with a full head of grey. I will die with my cap on. I don't recognize myself in the mirror without one, and apart from that one moment of lucidity in the yard, my grandfather didn't recognize me either. When teaching in schools, I get called far worse things than baldy. I wouldn't wish for my pupils' deaths, but in the Bible, 2 Kings 2 ends with 2 she-bears mauling the prophet Elisha's young tormentors. In the King James Version, they say, "Go up, thou bald head." It's funny as hell. And then it isn't. They're not even named. 42 kids killed at God's bidding. Since becoming a full-time faggot, I've been rethinking power imbalances, all the strands that tie structural oppressions together. When I was a child, handing my mother her rollers one by one at night, I didn't question God this way. And then one day I became too old to stand so close to her parted scalp. I still don't question my mother. Or rarely. This, I would venture, does run in our genes. Her mother was twice as spirited. I peel my head every 4th day with a 0 fade clipper. Less hair lands on the bathroom floor each time. A mixed blessing. Though I now seldom pray, I call her more, trying to let go.
Hi everyone. So as well as your stunning sets, we wanted to have a discussion today. The most interesting part of a night for me is the themes we tap into in our work. And particularly here, I always find it really interesting looking at the commonalities and differences in the queer experience. I want to start by asking you, I guess, the obvious question right now, which is, how has the pandemic affected you? And particularly, how has it affected your access to your queerness?
It's just affected my options. I felt like physically cut off from my queer friends and queer spaces in particular. Although I've found some online queer spaces, it's not the same. And so it's just having the immediacy of people around me. My queerness for me is very people focused, is being around other people. And so that's been difficult. But on the other hand, I've still found that through social media, through conversations like this as well.
Like when you go into a poetry space, often it's a space where you don't have to argue for your identity. You can just go in there like you're safe, you're valid, you're cool, you don't have to worry, which is rare, it can be rare if you don't, which you luckily start to forget sometimes if you go to enough poetry events. I've been looking inward. I've been turning inward a lot, doing a lot of internal stuff. And some of that is also, I've been having like random epiphanies about stuff not to do with being queer or whatever. But also it's meant I've also had a look at my own sort of identity as well. I've had a bit of space to like think or just think, okay, I've got more to explore here. I'm watching a lot of trans TikTok compilations. I just noticed they just came up as like this recommended thing, and they're like my favorite thing to watch after like a hard day of J.K. Rowling tweets, you know?
So I've kind of been turning to like natural spaces a little bit more, like really trying to be present in nature. And I've kind of been like just reading a lot about nature writing. I've been reading Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer recently, and there's a lot of queer stuff in there, even though it's not a book necessarily about queer plants or queer plant science or anything like that. It's in there, and I'm just like, cool, I'm kind of seeing queerness in lots of other spaces that don't have the queer label on it. I've kind of gone down a bit of a hippie route where I'm kind of like, I'm in a time of transformation, and this lockdown has definitely offered me that, which I'm incredibly grateful for, that's what I'm getting from it.
I think it's really interesting that everyone's like touched on the internet, because I think when I first found my identity or whatever, that's where I got everything. And now I don't use it as much to validate myself, but I do find that I feel a bit mad sometimes if I don't get to talk to someone else other than my partner who's queer. And I also really miss that group thing, because you can solve those kind of queer or but identity problems that no one else in the world seems to be listening to or talking about, only by doing a proper group dissection of it. And I kind of need that.
What I have found is people are more willing to have like deeper conversations, because we can't talk for an hour over a coffee about how your day went or what your week was like, because we know what your week was like. So it's like, hey, how are you? I'm having a really tough day. My mental health isn't great. Let's talk about that. And I just find it like really interesting that that's where we're going to straight away. It feels a bit more weird. We've gotten a lot of clutter out of the way in that kind of day-to-day conversation.
And I think a lot of people have been trapped with themselves or trapped with their partner. That's maybe a negative word, but I think a lot of people have been thinking about how they present to themselves or to their partner a lot more, and their own self-identity. I just wondered, do you want to talk a bit more about how you've kind of been finding or changing your own identity as like a writer as a result of the pandemic?
That's a hard one. I'm not sure I know yet. I definitely know that I'm kind of like a lot of change, or at least a lot of like things going on inside, a bit of a chrysalis state, I reckon. I think I'm in the mush state. I think the caterpillar turns to mush. So I'm kind of in that state, but I'm okay with that. I like that I'm not even in my final form. That's kind of cool. I definitely need a haircut. Your hair's looking great. I don't know how you do it.
I feed off people. I do a lot of work with schools, with young people, and not turning up face to face to schools affects me. Like often I'll be running workshops, and in those workshops that will give me I'll have to create prompts, and in turn that sort of helps with my writing for poetry anyway. I guess that will have an effect on the writing that comes out in the next few more months, but I always like to see things in a longer. I try and take comfort from like just saying that this is 6 months out of a lifetime, which may be another 60 years, who knows. So I am just going to just go with it. We're all poets and who are used to like doing things on stages. I find that helps with my editing process without me realizing it. And so I'm not having that invisible editing process of having hundreds of ears.
A lot of the growth I've been doing, a lot of it is realizing like it's going back to trusting your own instincts, which is interesting, or trusting things before everything else was imposed upon you.
A friend of mine gave me a really great quote that was after a conversation about butterflies, Jasmine. So there's a few signs telling me that I need to tell you this quote. I don't know where she got it from, but it basically is just let go or be dragged. That is like, that's kind of been a bit of a motto for me during lockdown. Just, you know what? Let it go. It's not dragging me anymore. I'm letting it go.
Who even used a few pints, ran a pub table to get the poets philosophizing? It's like instinct.
And you'll be hearing way more of that high quality interrogation of the very fundamentals of queer identity later on tonight. Our next poet is Jasmine Gardosi. Jasmine is a writer who is always pushing her practice to new heights through incredible innovation and drive. As such, she's pretty inspiring, and I remember the first time I saw her live thinking, oh, you can do poetry like this. She really does hold the audience in the palm of her hand and is a woman of many talents, even learning beatboxing in quarantine. And I think we might get to see that skill tonight. Please welcome to the stage the immeasurably creative and effervescent Jasmine Gardosi.
Hey everyone, my name is Jasmine Gardosi. And welcome to my set. I'm going to start off with a bit of fun. Pretending to be straight. 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 It's like dancing to music you hate. It's like dancing to music you hate. It's like dancing to music you hate. Pretending to be straight. It's like dancing to music you hate. It's like dancing to music you hate. It's like dancing to music you hate. And it fucking sucks. Hey there, yes, I am in my closet. Haha, you got the joke. Yeah, I think it's especially interesting considering what's been going on in the past month or so on social media. You know what I'm talking about, what with gender recognition and a certain famous author. A lot of the stuff that we've seen there on social media is enough to stuff someone back into their closet for a while, even halfway, you know. I remember, this poem, I remember walking around Birmingham city centre last year, seeing a lot of rainbow flags on banks and corporate buildings, and I'm like, cool, thanks guys. When shit hits the fan and supporting us is no longer fashionable or convenient, will you still support us? Like, all of us. So this poem is a reminder about when support wasn't quite as convenient as it might be now. They sold oxygen in bottles. They sold oxygen in bottles with screw caps. They sold oxygen in bottles with flip lids. They sold oxygen in bottles priced 89p. They sold oxygen in bottles priced £1.50. They sold still oxygen. They sold sparkling. They sold oxygen containing Welsh Valley minerals and compounds. They sold oxygen with a cool, distinctive, crisp taste. They sold oxygen with something filtered out. They sold oxygen refined by Section 28. They sold this only naturally occurring oxygen. They sold this only age-appropriate oxygen. They sold pre-watershed oxygen. They sold traditional family values oxygen. They sold oxygen that made us choke from ceilings and called it safe for human consumption. But they sold oxygen most people could breathe. Now, years later, they bottle new oxygen. They bottle proud oxygen. They bottle rainbow oxygen. They bottle May bank holiday weekend oxygen. They bottle Sky vodka sponsorship oxygen. They trap it in taut glass. A waiting gasp, lips pent like champagne. They prime it with foil. They put it on sale. We do not buy it. So, on average, just over 35 minutes of mathematics class per day. Yeah, just over 35 minutes of mathematics class per day times 5 equals 3 hours of math class per week. 3 hours of math class per week times 12 equals 36 hours of maths per term. Yeah, of course, that's easy. 36 hours of maths per term. 36 hours of maths per term times 3 equals 108 hours of maths per year. 108 hours of maths per year. Now, the third term is shorter, so rounding that down, that's 100 hours of maths in a year. 100 hours of maths in a year. Now, the years for a child from 11 to 16 equals 5 years of learning for GCSE. 5 years of learning for GCSE. 100 hours times 5 years of learning, that's 500 hours of maths in your teens. And my relationships are unbalanced equations. And I know trigonometry, just not my own triggers. And I get the rule of binary, just not my gender identity. And I am a fraction now. Walking around with a whole university degree. $500 hours of maths in your teens. 500 hours of maths in your teens. 500 hours of maths in your teens equals 3 exams for 1 GCSE. This one is called Maybe We Don't Hear That Many Same-Sex Love Stories Told in the Third Person Because It's Hard to Tell Who's Who Since They Share the Same Pronouns. She is munching cereal while staring at her girlfriend across the kitchen table. She'd like to tell her that she loves her. She is in the first she and her is in the girlfriend, obviously. So she would like to tell her girlfriend that she loves her. She doesn't know how to tell her girlfriend that she loves her. Not for the first time. Her teeth balance an oat cluster. It's just right. The cereal, that is, not the situation. Because you do not tell someone you love them for the first time over breakfast. Mornings are too anticlimactic. Plus, she's about to go out and see people. She is in... her girlfriend is about to go out and see people. She's about to go out and see people too, but that's not what she means. So, she is about to go out and see people. And... she wouldn't have the space and time to not feel pressured to say it back, and she wouldn't want that. She is in the first she wouldn't want that, but well, both of them really. In fact, these days, she takes backflips over sentences in order to avoid the exact combination of words. Because words tend to fail her. Like when she introduces her to her acquaintances as her friend. Or when they walk through the voltage of strangers' stairs holding hands and she wants to say something like, yeah, we love each other, is there something wrong with that? But words still fail her. Words didn't always fail her. She said, I love you before to someone else, just that time she feels like maybe she failed the word. And she knows what the problem is. Sitting here, munching cereal across the table from her girlfriend. She doesn't fully trust her yet. Her, as in herself. She feels like maybe she'd like to get to know her a little better first. her, as in herself. But we already know, don't we? That she loves her. She now being the girlfriend, and her now being the she, as in the first original she. What I mean is, she obviously loves her back, and she knows this. She is the first she. She knows this because she has never needed an I love you from her. I come to think about it, she, as in the first she, has never needed an I love you from her, and that's what shows her, and that's what shows her. So she knows, therefore, that she loves her, and she knows that she loves her, and she can see that, and she can see that. So she don't need to say it, and she don't need to say it, because words don't always hold out, do they? So she doesn't say it, but then she does say it because she wants to say it, but then she can't say it because there's still an oat cluster in the way, and it spurts from her mouth as a comment of milk and love and spit. And she sees it. And she sees it land on the varnished wood. And she shrugs. And she shrugs. And they don't bother with words because words fail them.
Oh, we've obviously talked a lot about the pandemic. But if I'm honest, if another person tells me they've written a 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 word novel about the pandemic, I think I might scream. So I wanted to ask you guys specifically what you might have been working on or thinking about. You don't have to, disclose your secrets. That has absolutely nothing to do with the pandemic.
I've been working on learning beatboxing. Yeah. You may laugh now, Tom.
Are you going to show us?
But just you wait until... No. So I've been doing that. I'm actually getting all right. And I think that the aim is to combine it with poetry. And it's just like this creative constipation that I've been talking about hasn't helped. It's like, oh, look at this lovely big chunk of time to write. However, it's not happening. I think mostly because what really drives me are like events and like a community, things happening. I'm like so a bit blocked on that front. But don't you worry. Things will happen.
Don't cut you out. I like the idea of constipation because it implies there's something coming. Yeah. It's not that nothing's happening. There is something coming.
It's coming. It's coming.
At some point.
It's gonna be painful when it comes out.
Most people have like really interesting, like cool punk teenage years experiences, whereas mine is like me and my friends packing our bags and heading off to deserted forest to light some candles and have some incense, or like hitchhike through the dark on Halloween night and find an abandoned cottage to go do tarot cards. And like, so I feel like I'm kind of being called back to some of that kind of spiritual stuff that I would have explored in my teenage years. So I'm kind of seeing it through the lens of returning back to that. Almost like what Jazz was saying at the start about returning pre-conditioning almost. And also what it means to be an artist in this age. What does landscape poetry, which is, traditionally a very sort of a wandered lonely to cloud, what does that mean to be updated as a spoken word art form in this particular time?
My mental capacity has just been reduced by the time I've sent 2 emails. That's it for the day. And I do have a mini trampoline here, so I've been disturbing the downstairs neighbours because that gives me joy, a bit of trampolining.
One of the things I really like, I enjoy, is there's a Facebook groups that are called stuff like accidental queer representation or queer spotting. And a good example of that for me would be at the end of the alley outside my house, there is a bit of graffiti which just says cheesy tights. Just that alone, and it always reminds me of drag queens. And I wondered if any of you had a similar kind of accidental spotting that you've seen recently, something that made you laugh.
Seeing all these rainbows in the window, and especially now, like some people have kept them up, and during Pride. So I just ended up writing this poem about my mum being really disappointed that I'm gay, but happy that like with the pandemic, with lockdown, that there's no one sleeping in my bed tonight, but God's been planting rainbows in every window like a warning.
A promise.
Yeah, as a promise. So yeah, that's my like accidental queerness, all these rainbows coming up.
I don't know if it's accidental, but like Duolingo comes out with some really queer sentences to like translate. They are very inclusive. And I'm just like, you know what, Duolingo, you go.
So one of the things I'm really interested in people's strong memories, and nice to know time like recently-ish that you felt really immersed in your queerness. For me, that is, I said Bristol Pride was on the Downs, which is actually a place, so it's this big common ground where I guess gay men used to often gather for some good old-fashioned fun. But now when we're Pride on the Downs, it means that I was sitting there with friends underneath a tree in a bit of sun, and that kind of quiet loud you get where there's a lot of people around. And I remember just sitting there and feeling like breathing out and feeling very like, oh yeah, these are all people here, and that's great.
I think Kieran's frozen a bit again.
Oh no.
I bet he's just pretending to freeze.
Yeah.
I've got the one. It's a great memory.
I'm not much of a clubber, but there have been a couple of clubs where I felt like that, and I could have been wearing anything or doing anything, and there's loads of people who are like me and wish me no ill. And again, like I found that with Black Pride, it was growing up, it was really necessary for me to see that it was possible to be Black and gay, and even to have the kind of background that I did, with parents who grew up in the Caribbean. Yeah, and dancing to like bashment and soca and all of that, and me not having to feel away. But also a lot of poetry spaces are like that. Yeah, places where I'm able to perform without having to perform, because usually it's the other way around.
Like where either your otherness is lifted or there's so much other in the room that it doesn't feel like it's there.
Yeah, more the former, I'd say. But also where I'm just given room to breathe and I could be anything or anyone.
Our final poet of the night is Kieron Hodges. Normally with spoken word, I first experience a poet through the stage. But with Kieron, I was passed his book on recommendation and absolutely fell in love with the way he writes. His writing is gentle, but deeply immersive and filled with reflection, but in a very honest tone. His performance is the perfect pair to this writing. It is my delight to welcome to the stage the wonderful Kieron Hodges.
Hey guys, my name is Kieron Hodgers, and I'm really pleased and delighted to be with you for this Pride event with Milk Poetry and Bristol Pride. I always have the best times when I'm down in Bristol, whether I'm performing or just travelling or seeing friends. So I'm really sad not to be with you for this, but hopefully it won't be too long before I get to come back and we can celebrate and party and hang out and catch up. I've been writing a lot about the environment, our relationship to landscape, what it means to be alive at this time of increased climate crisis, increased concern and increased action. And this first poem is kind of about how these big issues that can be really hard to comprehend actually kind of affect us in the day-to-day. And the title of it is Solastalgia, which is a phrase coined by a philosopher a couple of years ago, that relates to the psychological existential dread that we experience from our changing landscape and our impacted environment. I hope you like it. I open my mouth to describe how my nerves are rusted nails down a blackboard and an iceberg falls out. Sits there, stubbornly melting in the middle of my counsellor's box room. Her pursed lips loosen. Eyebrows rise like a tide. Hold it like an inner child, she suggests, with the tip of her pen. I lean in from the fold-out sofa bed with the kind of tentative hug you'd give at an office party you weren't invited to. Clocks tick deadlines on both walls, and the patterns of lost continents surface in drips on my shirt until, having claimed surface area, the water crawls up the shorelines of the room, passing marks of a child's growth on the doorframe. reading Venice, Amsterdam, London, New York. We laugh about 90s disaster movies like we weren't in one. Her smile falls to rest, and I wonder, do counsellors get CPD for stuff like this? How safe can she make this space, really? Is it triggering to know it's not just the world inside my head that's on fire anymore? Can she hear the whipping permafrost crack, guns slinging across the room as well? Does she smell the same billowing popping candy of forest fires snapped from downstairs? Is she woken to the harmonium drone of bulldozers marching in the street echoing like tinnitus? Her curt note advises me to go home, line up my thoughts, where in the comfort of privacy I pluck them from the thaw. Face wipes, cotton buds, toothbrushes, straws. Bags for life bearing other, smaller bags for life, cigarette butts crusted with glitter, mismatched Tupperware lids, containers filled with Christmas cracker junk. I hold them like outgrown baby's clothes and stack them into a scrapped silhouette. An artificial me of striking resemblance sits there in my writing chair. His egg carton gel swings to say, how does it feel to have discarded something more meaningful than that which you've sat down to make? You cannot prevent me, he smirks, but at least you can afford to be so wasteful. Now I know what it is to be nothing beyond what someone will leave, but my mind is a glacier. Saving it can feel like an endless job until it all starts to melt. This next poem looks at how we might find solutions by getting lost in nature, by kind of allowing ourselves to become queered by nature in some way. It uses a singular they-them pronoun inspired by the Fool's Journey in the tarot cards. And by the end of his journey, he becomes a non-binary character, which I really liked how that relates to how nature and the environment is kind of naturally non-gendered, naturally moves between binaries of that. And it's called incentivizing falling to the dead weight. Slowly over time, but realized suddenly, their tongues stopped doing the thing they'd now forgotten the word for. In searching for it, they lost themselves in the forest, plucked the nerves from their wrists, wrapped them round the roots, grouped each as a guest of the other. The soil dug deep as it does. Found it wasn't a misplaced mouth, but a heart so close to exploding that if they gave it breath, it'd blow into a sinew-splattered sweep of branches, veins having burst into wings, proof, maybe, that a world this harsh can turn you inside out after all. Instead, they got dew-drunk and suckered, felt the beauty of each dutiful ache incentivizing falling to the dead weight, and sacked the spider's web sold as safety net. Dropped the deceit and debt of power, sweetened the bitter of never being told souls don't glow on the underside. They found a new levity in letting go, allowing the wind to hoist them to a mumbling storm where clouds like inkwells waited for the tips of leaves to swell and write cursive in the breeze stories they could never tell, could never grasp the hand of, couldn't queer round its accent. The feeling fell fallow to disappointment. The same sick gavel that brought them here took them, back to pouring medicine from the wrong bottle, back to being scared in safety, back to echoing oracle, back to sleep dark as strata until at some point, waking, this time from a febrile dream with this green thing, an umbilical shoot, this chlorophyll question mark sprouting in pursuit of light, asking, will you grow with me? Patient in our progress and sure of the course, will you allow, as clear and intentional as a leaf opens to the sun, all your thoughts to become oxygen? Are you ready to see language as an ecosystem? that your tongue coexists with the shifting sand it lives amidst, that the conditions of its soil is never fixed, that we transform when we persist, and listen to something within ourselves we might have just missed. This last poem kind of looks at how we can find connection even though we are apart, specifically when someone passes on. And I am aware that the person this poem is for passed on a year ago today, so it feels quite strangely apt to be reading it for you today. It's called A Ceremony for Broken Bark. Here, black rope sinks, bargaining for balance with the earth's swallowing maw. Pallbearers, tending with more thought than prayer, pour libation, giving to ground what a grandmother gave first, so that she, in turn, may bestow what's been given back to green. The ceremony for broken bark gifts its growth to the forest floor. Hopeful, greedy grubs might flourish, feasting on the femur of a fallen fir. Spurred into sharing sentimental stories, grief nurtures us the same. The scent of pine after rain, matching cups of tea again and again, the threatening sting of a wooden spoon. They will be scarce soon. These stories, these trees, if we let them leak from memory. Instead of elegy, apology, or a buried goodbye, let the past be a pit for planting, held in the hollow of language, the mine of a mouth, the gulp of a glass tipped to toast. Let this hole in the soil become a womb. For as the body is a bulb waiting to bloom, every forest is also a tomb. Forget for a moment that flesh falls to ruin and see it was once a tree. The only chapel where I pray freely, returned with you soaked into its memory, finds me, looking for a place to grieve, and calls my eyes towards its leaves. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you're all still well, even though lockdown seems to be lifting. I hope you're all safe, and I hope you are continuing to be happy and find joy and be creative. And we will be back together again soon, I hope. If you liked what you heard, you can check me out on social media if that is your thing. Facebook and Twitter, Ciarán Hodgers, poet. You could buy my book if you're interested, called Cosmocartography, from my website, kieronhodgers.com, or you could buy it directly from the wonderful Burning Eye Books directly. Thanks again for listening. I'm really looking forward to seeing the other poets' contributions and to our discussion. So yeah, thanks again and stay safe.
Can I just say thanks so much for kind of joining this discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your poetry as well, because like that's part of this. And yeah, like thanks for being part of this night. I wanted to engage in this stuff that we've been talking about. I wanted to do it at this time of the year when, like, because of Pride, and I wanted to do it in a way that kind of spoke to those parts of kind of poetry and kind of talking about things. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight, for being involved, and yeah.
Thanks for having us, Tom.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye forever.
Bye.
And with that, I will bring the night to a close. I'd like to thank again our incredible performers. I'd also like to give a huge thanks to Milk Poetry and Bristol Pride for all their support. I especially want to thank Apples and Snakes for their creativity and their collaboration, without whom this night wouldn't have happened. Thank you everyone at home for tuning in / clicking, and I hope you all have a great night and to see you in real life soon. Here is a final poem from me about all those small, odd, queer moments. Non-dairy alternatives. The milk revealing itself to be off in the morning is always a surprise. An alchemy of a thing as heat makes roiling lumps from cream. I remembered it later when I was coming back from town, which was mainly because I was starting to get a headache, but my bag was so full that I had to hold the plastic bottle in my hand, which was too cold for winter with no gloves. The man sitting opposite me on the bus saw I had given it its own seat and asked me what it was for, which felt such a personal question until he explained coffee or tea. Not that it mattered what I said, as he listed all of the milks he had tried and why each one worked or didn't, which is mainly a list of milks that all go well in coffee but not in tea, except for cow's milk and goats, but not sheep's, apparently. And I knew he was right, particularly about the oat milk, because that's why I'd skipped tea this morning, because sometimes an oat milk backup with sinking oaty clouds is a bit much. And then my boyfriend rang me. When I put down, he asked if that was my partner on the phone. And he asked it suddenly carefully after the cascade of milk reviews. I hadn't really thought about being outed by a name like John showing up on a phone screen. Said, yes, it was. But then he said, oh well, that's okay then. I spent the rest of the afternoon wanting to try almond milk in coffee, wondering what he had meant by that, and half wishing I had hugged him because he felt kind, and I felt a hug would almost have made sense, or have been the strangest thing to do.